Is it okay if I sit?
The School Board of Duval County School District is now convened in a special board meeting. I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone present. The Duval County School Board is here to set policy for the district that will improve student achievement and address other important business items that require a vote of the board. The management and the day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. It is not the role of the board to make managerial or operational decisions. The board has policies and procedures in place to assist the superintendent in resolving management and operational issues. As a show of courtesy and respect to each other, we ask that all mobile phones be turned off and that no flash photography be used during the meeting. For those wishing to address the board during our public comment portion of the board meeting, please note that pursuant to board policy, we accepted speaker cards for this meeting until the published start time for the meeting. Thank you for your taking the time to join us and for the interest in the operation of Duval County School District. At this time, we'll move on to the approval of the April 26, 2023 agenda. That the Duval County School Board approve the April 26, 2023 agenda as submitted on April 24th. I ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Joyce and a second by Board Member Jones. At this time, I will now call, are there any further comments on that? I'll now call for your vote. Do I need to do a hand count? No.
Just a moment.
Okay.
Thank you. Should be up.
I'm not seeing the final count.
It's all passed.
Okay.
All good.
That item passes by a vote of 6-0, and thank you for the assistance from our staff. We now will move on to the public comments. We are now on the public comment portion of our agenda. The school board welcomes your comments on matters that are before the board for consideration. It is not the board's intent to respond, but to use the input in our deliberations. To give everyone appropriate respect and courtesy, we ask the audience to refrain from audible comments or applause. When you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. The board will allocate time for public comment based on the number of speakers who have filled out speaker cards prior to the designated time. If 1 through 20 speakers have signed up to speak, each will be allotted 3 minutes. If 21 to 40 speakers have signed up to speak, each will be allotted 2 minutes. If there are 41 or more speakers, they will have 1 minute to speak. Today we have 21 speakers, so each will be allotted 3 2 minutes. Thank you. If your concerns exceed that time, you may present written comments to the board. Board policy provides for an orderly and efficient meeting without disruption by words or actions. You are asked to refrain from references to specific individuals and to follow expectations for civil discourse. We have placed hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes at the podium. We ask that each speaker wipe down the podium before you address the board. Please remember that speaker cards were only accepted until the published start time for the meeting. And as always, thank you for taking the time to address the board. And I will say to those present who are speaking, this board listens to all comments, and we are grateful for your input. We do ask for civil discourse, and we've been fortunate for months on hand that has occurred. So we ask for that to continue today, if you would. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to our Vice Chair, Vice Chair Pearson, and she will begin with the cards.
Thank you. I'm going to call 3 names. The first name, please come to the podium. The second will be on deck. And the third person will line up in the hole if you're familiar with baseball terminology. When I call after this person speaks, then the next person will hit the number 3 spot, and we'll keep filling that way. First up is Tiffany Clark. Second is Ellen Glasser. Third is Nadine Ebry. And when you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Tiffany Clark. I thought it was necessary because there will be several people that will speak to Dr. Green's character.
Please do not refer
I'm
to
so
staff
sorry.
by name.
There will be several people that will speak to several things today. So I'm coming to you as a parent of a former Douglas Anderson School of the Arts student who is now proudly in the halls of Berklee School of Music in Boston, Massachusetts. So this is an email, and I have several of these emails, but this one touched me in particular that I had the opportunity to share with our superintendent. Good evening, family. We are indeed family because we partner, share, encourage, support, and stand together for Duval County Public School students, despite our shortcomings and even our disagreements that make us family. As parents, we are often labeled and challenged daily with changing the narrative in our community regarding our parenting in and out of the classroom. I know that when it counts, it is up to us, parents, to stand up and speak out on behalf of all children and all parents. During my time at Douglas Anderson, I can tell you from my own personal experience as a parent, there are many things, many situations, many encounters that never left the halls in the classroom of that school. And unfortunately, due to that, a lot of our students left bruised. A lot of things were never given to the administration or presented. And so here we are with a situation based on one person that never made it to where it needed to be made it to. And so I can tell you as a parent of a sophomore and a former Douglas Anderson student.
Thank you. And you
Yes.
could submit the rest of your comments to
Yes.
the board if you like. Okay. Next in line is Katie Hathaway.
Good afternoon. I'm Ellen Glasser from Atlantic Beach. I was the mayor there for 5 years. I know today's meeting. Thank you for your service, Madam Chair, honorable school board members, Dr. Green. I know today's meeting is about investigation at Douglas Anderson, but I am reading a lot in the paper about direction of leadership within Duval County. In recent years, on a state level, we've heard a lot of politically charged language about various issues, and that's fine. But there are monumental issues like literacy and mass school shootings that affect countless children. There's an overlay of political divisiveness in our state. I don't think there's much debate about that, and the rules are changing. Today's topic is very serious, and about that, we all agree. But let's not deflect from the issue that is an opportunity to fix a problem by throwing a public servant, a dedicated public servant, under the bus. As you do your due diligence on the severity of previous allegations about which I know nothing, starting with the former choral music director, please do not get ahead of yourself and terminate a respected leader. I suspect the investigation is pending and student privacy is paramount, and you have to navigate that in public. About Douglas Anderson, my daughter was a student there with the choral music director about 20 years ago. I realize my experience is not current, but at the time I thought he played favorites when he picked out his soloists. I never complained, but I say this to make a point that there have been many superintendents, principals, teachers, parents, children, and the community at large that has allowed that to continue. In a large bureaucracy, leaders often rely on those with boots on the ground and the leaders in the school to tell them when there's a problem to be addressed. And I feel very sure that Dr. Green would have done that if she thought any child was at risk. So I speak-
Ma'am, again, please refrain from names. I
Oh, I'm sorry.
apologize, it's
I'm
board
sorry. I
policy.
tried to-
You're doing, we appreciate
I
it.
tried to sanitize it
You're
beforehand.
good. And please put 10 seconds back on the clock, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have worked with the superintendent many times over the last several years. I don't question her integrity, her character, and her steadiness in a very challenging environment. She has done her utmost to navigate through this polarizing time with dignity and to uphold the rule of law. I wholeheartedly support the superintendent and hope you can all work together to focus on the real problem, which is abusers like the former choral music director at Douglas Anderson. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next in line is Sharman Smith.
Hi, everyone. So today I wholeheartedly stand in support of our superintendent. She is an exceptional leader who genuinely values the teachers, students, staff, parents, and the community. It is disheartening to witness such a remarkable woman recognized as Florida's Superintendent of the Year and top 10 finalists for the same title nationwide being subjected to negative media coverage. It is equally disappointing to see respected or once respected school board and city council members allowing politics to dominate our school district instead of truly prioritizing the best interests of our students. Our superintendent is compassionate, she's nurturing, and this is not just limited to her professional role that she undertakes, but she has countless actions that she quietly does without even seeking recognition. For example, one notable instance involved a teacher who was on the verge of leaving the profession. Dr. Green personally visited, so the superintendent personally visited the school to speak with the teacher and persuaded them to stay. That teacher eventually became one of the finalists for Duval County Public Schools Teacher of the Year. So our superintendent exemplifies genuine leadership through her actions such as driving the school bus, stepping in as a substitute teacher in classrooms. And the situation at Douglas Anderson is both heartbreaking and concerning. And what is also concerning is the manner in which certain individuals have exploited these circumstances to target our superintendent. So we hold immense gratitude and affection for our superintendent, and I'm voicing the support of many who in our district really stand by our superintendent, but they're fearful of speaking out due to potential retaliation. However, I refuse to allow fear of retaliation to prevent me from speaking up. So thank you to our superintendent for everything that you have done. We respect you and love you so much.
Thank you. Next in line is Elnora Atkins.
Hello, my name's Katie Hathaway. I'm a parent of 2 students in Duval County Public Schools. I am here to start by saying that the timing of this meeting is kind of unfortunate. 1 p.m. on an early release day hinders a lot of parents with kids in our public schools to show up and attend, and I know many wanted to be here today. I too am gravely concerned about the horrific misconduct at Douglas Anderson. This district must dismantle the system that allowed a predator to hold his teaching certificate and remain in the classroom for so many years. Jumping to conclusions, calling to clean house before a thorough external investigation is not due process. This board needs to focus on supporting the victims at DA and ensuring a full investigation is conducted and commit to transparency, justice, and reform. And rather than repeating what others have said, I too echo what the former mayor stated. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, A.W. Barlow.
Hi, my name is Sharman Smith. I am a Fletcher parent and a former bill collector, mortgage underwriter, and fraud investigator. And there's a few key components to this complex calculation I don't understand. But I am a public school student, so I'm going to use my fingers to count it out. And it's my understanding that this teacher went through 8 investigations before this investigation landed him in jail. And each of those 8 investigations were done under 3 white male superintendents. And then when the first black female superintendent showed up, he ended up in jail. Now, it is my understanding that there is also other active investigations within this school district, and I would like to know how many have gone through easy, insufficient investigations designed by predators within the system to protect the reputation of people who do not deserve to have their reputations protected. I would like to understand how many people are scared that they're going to get caught right now because there is somebody within our system that has the ability to expose them and actually protect our children. And before we get rid of this woman, I'd like to have the answers to all those questions so that every person in this community can understand why exactly it is that she is being targeted so heavily. She is an excellent administrator with a proven track record for solving real problems in our district. And if you let her, she'll solve this one too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in line is Ken Manuel.
My name is Eleanor Atkins, and I chair the Education Committee for the Jacksonville Branch NAACP. I'm here today to talk about the Duval County Public Schools Superintendent and how much we admire, respect, and believe in her ability to continue taking the school system on up to the next level and then the next level. I know that you, the Duval County Public School Board, know what an asset she has been to the district since she's been here, because she demonstrated outstanding leadership in the sales tax referendum to fund schools renovations and repairs, including building new schools, improving technology, and repairs. She led us through the COVID pandemic successfully. And then in 2021, under her leadership, she improved the graduation rate of the Duval County Public Schools to 90.3%. And in 2021, she was named Florida Superintendent of the Year by the Florida Association of District School Superintendents. In addition, she changed the names of several schools that were named after Confederate leaders, for which we thank her. I could go on and on about the positive impact she has had on the Duval County Public School System. But as Helen Steiner Rice said, and I quote, "Cling to your standards and fight the good fight. Take a firm stand for things that are right." And that is what she does. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in line is Nancy Murray Settle.
Alvin Wellington Barlow is my name. I'm a pastor and an attorney. I'm a 1979 honor graduate from William Marion Raines. And I don't know the superintendent, but I do know policy and procedure, and most importantly, morality. Back in 2012, I had a case. I do personal injury cases. And I had a case against a teacher who had raped 3 elementary-age students. Prior to that, he got a complaint from Long Branch Elementary. A teacher reported him to the Department of Children and Families. They investigated him. They recommended to the school board that you remove him from elementary-age students. You all sent him out to Bulls Bay for a brief period of time. He finagled and got himself appointed to another school, Windy Hill Elementary, where he raped 3 children after he was already reported on. That case changed the policy that you currently have right now back in 2011, 2012, 2013. I'm very familiar with the case because I was an attorney. We did settle that case with the school board for the maximum, which was $300,000. That teacher's name was Christopher Baca. He was removed in
Please.
2015. I'm going to turn this in to you. The policy that you're talking about was violated by the teacher or the administrator who failed to report. Florida statute 39.201 requires mandatory reporting for any person who knows or has reasonable cause to suspect that a child has been the victim of sexual abuse. That goes right to the teachers, that goes right to the principal, that goes right to the administrators. That's who was fired ultimately in the Baca case. The principal was. Ed Pratt Daniels, who was the
Sir,
superintendent
sir,
at the
sir.
time, was
Please do not refer to
the
people by
superintendent-
name.
Thank
We
you, ma'am.
appreciate
the
that. Thank you.
superintendent at the time was never accused of any impropriety whatsoever. I'm a friend of his, I know him personally. So this is wayward, it's out of bounds, and it is immoral, unethical, and practically illegal. So superintendent, please do not resign.
Thank you.
And again, just a reminder, we really, please do not refer to people by name. We want to be careful of that, and we appreciate you working with us on that. That's there to protect students, it's there for different reasons, and we ask you please not to refer to people by name. We really appreciate all the comments. We are here to listen, we want to listen. If you could help with that, we would be so grateful. Thank you. Mr. Manuel.
I need to call the next name, though. Next in line is Shyla Jenkins. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Manuel, and I'm a member of the Jacksonville branch of the NAACP Educational Committee. I guess I'm here and others here because of the expanded media coverage regarding the superintendent's continuation in that position in Duval County Public School System. I guess all of this is in review regarding the sexual misconduct that occurred at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. This organization, NAACP, and myself, and others in this community are keenly mindful of the severity of this specific incident at Douglas Anderson, and acknowledge and concur with the superintendent and this board's immediate action in addressing that particular issue that included the teacher being removed from the classroom as well as ultimately from the school district. It's my understanding that there is a criminal investigation and charges that are being pursued by local law enforcement, and according to the information that's out there, the board is in the process of looking at a comprehensive investigation by an external entity to thoroughly examine this situation. As you know, and I'm sure you're aware of Dr. Green's resume.
Please don't.
I'm sorry. Are you aware of the superintendent's outstanding resume? Others have spoken about her being the superintendent of schools, Florida, as well as in 10 finalists nationally. I'm going to share with something that you may not be aware of, but in 2019, this school district, Duval County Public School System, received the Southeast Region of Cognitive Value-Driven Award of Excellence. Now, this award recognized institutions in the Southeast who systemically and systematically model Cognia. And for those of you on the board that may not aware, Cognia is the accreditation agency.
Thank you.
Accreditation agency. Could I finish the last little piece? Let me just say this. There's an old adage that says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The leadership of this school district is performing at an exemplary and effective manner, and there's no need to fix it or replace it.
Thank you. Okay, next in line is Pastor Jonathan Blackburn. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nancy Murray Settle, and I'm the parent of a Douglas Anderson senior in the vocal department. And I can attest from what she's told me, it's been a very hostile and toxic environment there for her. So it's sad for me, it breaks my heart that her high school experience is marred by this. I mean, this is quite a lot for a young person, and when we hear about anxiety, it's quite a lot for her. And I worry about the lessons that she's walking away with. Now, please don't teach my daughter to silence herself when she sees abuse by blaming other people, someone who is not responsible, who did not enact that abuse. Don't blame that person. Don't hold the superintendent as a scapegoat for the abuse that was perpetrated by a man who abused his power over children, young adults, but actually children. Don't let her learn that lesson, to be quiet because it's going to shake the boat, and it's going to, and that reporting abuse is going to mean that innocent people are being held accountable for acts that they did not do, that women are going to be held accountable for a man behaving badly. I ask you, please don't leave her with that lesson. I feel for all the young women that go off into their young adult life having this package that they will have to carry indefinitely for the rest of their lives. Let's show them that when you speak up and tell about your abuse, that the person responsible is the one that takes that blame.
Thank you. Somehow I got off. Next in line is Corinne Brown.
Good afternoon, Shyla Jenkins. In 2021, the grand jury investigation into Florida public school systems found that Duval County school systems were so egregious that for 4 pages of its preamble, it made recommendations that the DCPS school system modernize and revolutionize the system for reporting. Yet here we stand today, 2 years later, with the lack of what has happened from that request. Douglas Anderson administrative officials and members of the district failed to follow through when reports were put through for decades. As recently as 2021, we found out last week that this district did not do what it was supposed to do in making sure that this man could have been taken out of class and not impacting others for over 2 years at least. Our ask as alumni is that the investigation into the toxic culture at DA gives detailed transparency when it reports its findings, specifically clarity when it comes to what the current and past school administrations knew. We are asking the board to consider a public task force be a part of the investigation, that there's input from people that are chosen by the board, both from the public sector and the private education sector, to be available to have absolute access and give opinions or authority with this type of investigation. We're demanding that those who are found guilty in this investigation face disciplinary actions so severe as to be terminated. That if there is misconduct, we ask that this board do its job. Start the investigation. This is not about one person's conduct. This is about many. This is not about the character of the superintendent. This meeting is about Douglas Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you. To review, we have Pastor Blackburn, followed by Ms. Brown, followed by Ellie All.
Good afternoon. Pastor Blackburn, I'm representing the Baptist Ministers Conference of Duval and adjacent county, and I just want to speak to, one, the great performance and job our superintendent has done. This era has been difficult just in general with the COVID, the introduction of COVID, but one of the things that she introduced in particular was caring for not only students in schools, but students who are out of schools. She visited our conference one Monday to just share behavioral opportunities for families that were struggling. Little did I know a couple weeks later that I would receive a call from a student who had not been attending school since schools had been dismissed. And there are several children in our city who are no longer even participating. So her care and demonstration, care for students, goes far and wide. What do you call when you support a leader who can step aside their role indefinitely and run for president? I call that support. What do you call it when you take care of a leader's reputation when they have operated the sheriff's role for months illegally, not being able to do that? I call that an advocate. But what do you call it when you demonize those who work righteously and genuinely and caring in their role? I just say an enemy has done this.
Thank you.
And as former Representative Corinne Brown, as you come up, I just wanted to apologize for the little shuffle there. When we're doing comments, you know more than most what that's like, so I just wanted to apologize for the shuffle there.
Next in line is Tia Leathers.
First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to say God is good. I want to say it. Do we have any blind
Representative
people
Representative Brown, please
Yes.
don't engage the audience.
Oh.
We're here to listen to your comments, and we are ready to receive them right up here on the dais.
Okay.
Thank you.
And behind you are those from kids? Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, being over 30 plus years of elected official, being black and female, it's got to be challenging for the superintendent. But let me just say that I came on another subject area because I met a young lady in 8th grade, and she's concerned that the books are not in the library. So I'm hoping as you all do your investigations, you will make sure that students are able to get the books. I have worked with both Democrats and Republicans, whether it was governors, presidents, or mayors. And I have never experienced anything like what we're experiencing here in Florida in my entire life. It seems to me we are a bunch, the entire communities are a bunch of broken bones. We're not speaking out and speaking up. And that, as Lawton Childs used to say, that dog won't hunt. We need to change it. And we need to make sure we're doing the right things for our children. We had real problems with grades in the school. Superintendent was able to bring it up. We had schools that was going to be closed. The superintendent was able to change it. I don't know when you all said that you can't call the name of the person. That must be a new rule. I don't like it. I want to be able to look at a person and say, you've done a good job. 1 to 10, I give you a 10 plus.
Thank you. Next up is Melissa Bernhardt.
Good afternoon. I echo that first part about the name, being able to use the name. I have in my hand the 193 pages of.
Ma'am, I may have missed it. Can you state your name for the record?
Sure, Ellie All.
We just want to get it on record. Please give her 5 seconds back for my interruption. Thank you.
Thank you. I have in my hands the 193 pages of the 20th statewide grand jury report. Since this report, the third interim report, was issued in 2020, I've been watching and to see this board's response because my 8-year-old daughter is in your public schools. And when the final report and the presentment for Duval County was issued in August, I noted 2 things. One, even after our former police chief for Duval County Schools resigned and was prosecuted, the grand jury still suggested that they believed a, quote, thorough house cleaning was in order. I'm not here to talk about that. That's up to you to decide if that is necessary, and I submit to you, I'm not privy to all of the information. It very well seems to be. But I'm here to tell you that it is their second recommendation that you have wholly overlooked since 2020 that is the only thing that should matter to create the change that's necessary. And that is the recommendation that you change the reporting structure from the Duval County Police Chief for your public schools to not report into a superintendent or the board, but into the elected sheriff for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. They not only said that to you in 2020, they said it again in August. and you still ignored it. And let me say what they said, and this could have been written last week by our media. This is what they said with regard to Duval in 2020. Victims and witnesses suffer in silence rather than report crimes that will neither be investigated nor punished. Exposure to this circle of absurdity breeds students, teachers, and even law enforcement officers who become disenfranchised and abandon the school system altogether for a more rational environment. Please follow their recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next in line is Reverend Benjamin Dixon.
Good afternoon. May I ask a clarifying question before I begin? Through the chair. Exactly what does that yellow light mean? So with 2 minutes and 3 lights, how much time is remaining at the yellow light?
I believe it's 30 seconds with the other.
Okay.
So it's a cautionary, it's there for cautionary measure to let you know your time is
30
expiring.
seconds coming.
It's
Okay.
expiring, and I may be off on the 30, but it's there to make you know that
I
we're
figured
getting.
that much. I
And
just
then when
didn't
the
know.
red light starts blinking, it's like, ooh, okay,
Stop it.
got it.
Okay, got it.
All
I
right.
did not prepare remarks, which is why I needed to figure out the timing. I'm Tia Leathers. I'm a parent of a Duval County Public Schools student. I am a former employee of Duval County. I am a 13-year attendee of Duval County Public Schools. I just want to start by saying that I am not here to take away anything from what's happening at Douglas Anderson. My daughter is extremely into the arts, and in elementary school, I already don't want her to go there, and that's terrible. I will say that I am so confused about how I had to stand behind all these people to talk about something altogether different and how we got there. If we're talking about Douglas Anderson, why aren't we talking about Douglas Anderson? And then figuring out what needs to happen after we know what happened with Douglas Anderson, or anything else for that matter. One thing I do know, having worked here, is that I had an initiative that I was able to run that allowed me to see how many employees we had. And it was over 12,000 people on that list, part-time, full-time. 12,000 people. There are few people in this city can say that they have the leadership of that many people, and what each and every one of them are doing at every single point of the day. I would just reckon that there are so many measures to take to figure out what those folks are doing. But what I also know is difficult, having worked here, is that the target is always moving with less funds, and you're figuring out how to do so much more with so much less. So then, how do you figure out what 12,000 people are doing? I do appreciate all of you, because I know that none of this is easy, and you have to make very, very tough decisions. So what I will say is I'm disappointed that this has to take away from children, and I think it's evidence this morning, crazy enough, that Mamie Agnes Jones is where there was criminal activity and the kids couldn't even come to school, the place where our superintendent started. Like, it's full circle, and so I would challenge you all to take that little hint that something's bigger than us to do the right
Thank you.
thing. Thank you.
Next in line is Brittany Be More Trusting.
Good afternoon, everyone. Melissa Bernhardt with Citizens Defending Freedom. Let's talk about grooming. Let's talk about Douglas Anderson and all the other schools right here in Duval. Teachers are allowed to encourage and reward for being safe. Safe when I was growing up meant safe from harm. But this doesn't mean that in this case. What this is safe to talk to your teacher about sex, sexuality, pansexual, phrasexual, LGBTQAA+. I'm sorry if I missed a few on that. So what I'm here to discuss is Douglas Anderson, and not just that school, but many schools like it right here in Duval are constantly talking about sexuality. We shouldn't be surprised when a teacher assaults a student when we're advertising and bragging and encouraging sexuality. When we know what our scores are for reading, writing, and math, they are not where they want to be. I know that the super has worked incredibly hard to get us there, but we have to keep pushing forward with education, not sexual indoctrination. We have clubs after school that teach phrasexual. pansexual. We don't need these clubs in Duval. What we do need, if we really want to be fair, is faith-based organizations creating clubs that students can come and say, you know, I'm really confused about my sexuality. What does God have to say about that? Because what Duval is saying about it is we better make sure we stop the bullying. When the grades go up, self-esteem goes up, bullying goes down. We got to stop all this. Our children are suffering at our public schools and private schools, all the schools in Duval, because we are more concerned about sexuality than we are about their moral welfare, kindness, empathy, compassion. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Timothy Zindel.
My name is Reverend Benjamin Dixon. I am a former teacher here in Duval, and I couldn't be more grateful to come after the last speaker. As a faith leader, I'm grateful for what Duval has done for the LGBTQIA community. And the truth is, as I talk to my children about life, the one thing that I try to encourage them to do is engage in truth. Truth is I probably shouldn't have taken my mask off because we're still in a pandemic despite many people not believing it, and I believe that that is a part of the reason we're here. The other reason we're here is because there's a coordinated effort across this country, without question, targeting superintendents, particularly black superintendents, by organizations that have some representatives here today. I can't call names, so I won't. And as you begin this investigation into the distinguished career of the superintendent, I would encourage you to do additional investigation to see the hand behind what's going on. This is a political witch hunt, without question. And as I teach my children, if there's a hunt going on, you need to find out who's doing the hunting. Who are the people who are encouraging this? Who are the people who are the invisible hand that is trying to make this happen? Because I guarantee you, you will find that they are in lockstep with an administration that has declared a war on public schools, an administration, a governor who has declared war on blackness in the form of saying woke, a governor who has declared war on the most marginalized in our community, including the LGBTQIA community. And I say that as a man of faith, a man who stands on morality. We will not allow this division to come in any further, and this is the place where we are going to take a stand. So rest assured, we do have an idea of who's behind this. We do have an idea whose fingerprints are all over this. Even though they may have pudding on those fingerprints, we do understand exactly what's going on, and we are here to stand not only with the superintendent, but to let people know we're not going to sit down and take this lightly. We know the organizations, we know them, and we're going to stand against them. Amen.
Thank
To
you.
the audience, please, again, refrain from applause. We appreciate it. Honestly, when you do that, we don't always hear the speaker, and I genuinely want to hear the speakers. So thank you again. I know everybody is here for a reason. I appreciate it.
Next in line is Ivy Suter.
Hi, my name is Brittany B. Moore Trusting. I want to start by saying it is my understanding that following the grand jury report referenced earlier today, a third-party review was conducted, and just a couple of months ago, it was reported that there were no outstanding reporting issues. Maybe some people here today missed that. I am the mother of 2 DCPS children in elementary school and 1 up and coming in a few years. It makes me sick to my stomach that a teacher, perhaps multiple teachers, have harmed children in some of the most atrocious ways, continue to do so and get away with it. When I was a freshman in a small high school, it was known that an English teacher was behaving inappropriately with a star football player. By the end of the year, she was quietly removed by that school year, and we didn't hear much about it after that, just as local churches had done the same with their sexual predators. This nation has a very real problem. This is a systemic issue across the nation. I'm tired of the insanity of it and what feels like a revolving door of abuse and cover-up. I call for the superintendent and board to be a trailblazer for our children, to do a thorough and transparent investigation that will lead to serious reform. The victims and families of our children deserve better than political games with our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in line is Reverend Aaron Flagg.
Good afternoon. My name is Timothy Zendel. My comments are regarding the selection of a firm to conduct the investigation. It's obvious that we need to do something, and we need to pick a firm that's going to get the job done for us. Let's make sure we get the right company to do the job. Someone that has no history, no bias, no previous relationship with any of the administration, any of the schools. It comes in completely free and clear with no bias and no prejudice. That has to be done. We have to get to the bottom of what happened here. And regarding the scope and scale of the investigation, let's not just limit this to the local school. Even though we're focusing on an individual teacher, culture is created and fostered at many levels in an organization, especially one this large. And we need to go ahead and sweep through the entire organization and look for things that happened which broke down so that we can find out what needs to happen, put together an action plan, and get better from here. It's important that we find out exactly what happened at whatever level of the organization this exists. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And last in line is Eunice Barnum.
Hello, my name is Ivy Suter. In terms of the investigation, I urge the board not to consider any firm who has a relationship with the district or had a relationship with any district leadership in the past. The investigation must be truly objective and not a theater with the aim of defending the district from the get-go. We must have full transparency of the apparent deep state that has become prevalent in Duval County Public Schools. Our children are much too precious and too important. So I urge you to have an investigation that is objective with full transparency. Thank you.
Thank you.
God be the glory. My name is Aaron Flagg. I'm a member of a lot of different organizations, but I'm here representing me. I, as a little boy, remember a cartoon, Foghorn Leghorn in it. He told a little chicken hawk that the bulldog was a chicken. Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder can see what's going on here. And I know that God sits high and looks low. Now, no matter how we try to shave our sins and cover them up and justify them, there's no justification for wrongdoing. When you go to church Sunday, ask God if you're serving the right one or not. God bless you, keep you, and have you to do the right thing. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Thank you.
Good evening. Eunice Barnum. Let me be real. I'm sick and tired of the elected officials begging us to go vote. Vote for me. We vote, you get in, and then you forget for whom you work. We are the boss. We, the people. And number two, some of you have been here a long time. I know, I remember. And some of the reports I've read, this didn't just happen with the new superintendent. You're going to go pull all of the records. Do you hear me? You're going to pull records we're going to pull every year. Not just when you choose to start. If children have been hurt and we want them all seen about. I, too, am a parent. My child came out of public schools here. I had grandchildren, and now I'm a great-grandmother. Now, number three. This has been going on a long time. And it's not new. So the same way you was turning heads and looking away and whatever you did back then, you either going to uncover it all or we going to continue to move forward. Okay? No, you won't do this because she's making great gains, great improvement in the predominant black neighborhood, and we never had that before. I'm not stupid. We get new schools. She's doing a great job.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And we want all complaints. You're going to go back years.
Thank you. I have the wave cards as well. I'm going to read the wave cards. The instructions are support or oppose a topic item or agenda item. I'll read the name and then the topic. Jerome Hayes, in support of Dr. Green. Lucy Bravo, in support of transparent investigation. Elizabeth Anderson, in support of full investigation with transparency, justice, reform. Robert LeConte, in support of Dr. Green. Virginia Gray, in support of Dr. Green. Terry Mosley, in support of full investigation with transparency, justice, and reform. Cynthia Nixon, in support of full investigation with transparency, justice, and reform. Jessica Wilson, in support of Dr. Green. And that concludes.
Thank you. As we're going to move on to our discussion agenda at this point. The discussion agenda includes the hiring of third-party counsel as a result of recent events at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. This topic includes basically three main items. We're going to get an update from the Office of General Counsel in regards to the fact that we charged them with finding us a group to be able to do this, the scope of the work that's expected by this board, and a timeline of cost. As we do that, though, I want to make sure that we start our dialogue today with making certain that the Douglas Anderson community, as well as the community at large, understands that the focus of today's meeting is solely on the hiring of third-party counsel as it relates to recent events at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. The children of our school system deserve this to be the topic of today's meeting. I will tell you that having worked with each board member that sits on this dais for some time now, I can assure the public that every member of this board is fully committed to the safety and well-being of the very students we serve each and every day. As board chairman, it is always important to me that I make sure I give credit where credit is due. Board member Hershey is unable to be here today because she had an item with her family that was unavoidable. But quite candidly, she is the one that brought this recommendation to the board at our first public meeting after the recent incident at Douglas Anderson. And finally, to my colleagues on the dais, I want to make sure that I say to you that in working with the Office of General Counsel prior to this meeting, that we are here to give them feedback as to what our expectation will be in regards to, again, the scope of the work, the timeline that we will follow for this, and our general expectations. But I want to make sure you know that we will not leave here taking an action. I have asked them to construct an agenda item, particularly our Office of General Counsel member, Ray Poole, to construct an agenda item for next Tuesday's board meeting so we can actually take action at that time so that it can be fully encompassing of our conversation today. So I wanted to make sure I made that clear on the front side for everyone. With that being said, as we set the stage, I'm going to ask for the Office of General Counsel. I'll start with Mr. Poole, and then I know we have a number of attorneys from across the river. We are always grateful for you and the role you play in supporting our board, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Poole at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the board. We have with us this afternoon Ms. Ariel Cook and Mr. John Phillips, who are here to make a presentation to the board concerning the potential selection of an investigator, as well as engage in discussion of the scope of that investigation.
Good afternoon, through the chair. not quite sure exactly where y'all would like me to start, but if it's all right with y'all, I'll start with how this is actually set up in the charter and the board's rules. Normally, if we hire outside counsel, it's up to the general counsel, and then for the school board, any engagement that would be required would actually only require the signatures of Michelle Bagley and the superintendent and the general counsel and the firm we hire. Sorry, is that better? And so you wouldn't actually necessarily need to take action on this matter, because what I'm hoping is that we can actually get the investigation started sooner rather than later. And I'll leave that up to you, of course. So, but in any event, the general counsel made the decision that we ought to discuss this with y'all in public, and so that there is transparency, and also so we can, get it done so that you can understand why the firm that we selected got selected by us. So initially, I wasn't privy to the search. The search was done by the general counsel and by Sean Granite, who is the chief of our employment litigation department, and as well as the tort litigation department. And ultimately, they eliminated everybody local for reasons that I think should be obvious, that we don't want a firm that has any ties to anybody in particular. And ultimately, they asked me, well, what about Weiss Serota? What do you think of them? Because they had hit on them as a likely candidate. And it's Weiss Serota, Healthman, Cole, and somebody else. It's actually got a longer name than Weiss Serota. So, so I was familiar with, and am familiar with, the work of Jamie Cole. He is a first-rate, top-tier attorney, and his work product is superb, and he is a straight arrow and a straight shooter, and can be relied on, at least in my opinion, and the opinion of everybody else involved in our office, to deliver an unbiased, thorough, comprehensive investigation. So that's where we are. Now, we actually have an engagement letter that's in draft form because we haven't finalized it because of this meeting and because the events of yesterday suggested that perhaps the board should consider whether the allegations in the letter that arrived yesterday should be included in this investigation, because there may be some overlap between what's alleged and what is alleged at Douglas Anderson. And so the scope of work, which would currently be to conduct and complete a thorough investigation into facts regarding Douglas Anderson School of the Arts and the above-mentioned pre-suit claims, as well as facts relevant to defense and possible resolution of the above-mentioned claims, including any similar or potential claims brought to light. Arguably, that would include what happened, the allegations that were made yesterday, but probably we should tweak that a little bit, and then there might be, because of the additional work, we should bump the budget up a little bit to cover what is likely to be more work than was originally anticipated. So that's the scope. The timeline is difficult to say. These kinds of investigations can take a long time, or they can, and I don't know how you could do this one in a short period of time and be thorough. So I would say certainly not years, but certainly not a couple of weeks either. I would guess, some months. The time, so the budget, right now in the letter, it's $25,000. I think we probably need to bump that up to 30 if we include the extra work. And let me say a little bit more about this firm. They're not a politicized firm. They've represented in the past or have represent or currently represent in some capacity 28 school boards and over 60 cities. That run the spectrum. In fact, the most recent investigation they performed was for the St. Johns County School Board. But they've also worked for the Broward County School Board. So that this is a firm that, you know, prides itself on good, solid, unbiased, thorough, comprehensive work. And their work product shows that. So I highly recommend them. The general counsel was actually responsible for selecting them because it's not my call, it's his. And so that's where we are on that. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions that y'all might have.
Why don't we start with, first off, any feedback? And first off, again, thank you to you and thank you to Mr. Teal for the work that you all have done. And Mr. yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Phillips, and Mr. Granite, who is not here. He's out of town right now as well. There have been a number of people involved in getting us to this moment, so thank you to all of you all. That being said, what I'd like to find out first is, do any members of the board want to speak to the council in regards to who's been selected? It does sound like they've got a strong background, but certainly, does anyone give any feedback as it relates to that at first? Board Member Joyce, I see you.
Yeah, thank you. When we had this discussion a few weeks ago at the board table, and we talked about potentially who would do the investigation that we were asking for. I believe there was a firm that was presented to the board by the superintendent from Manatee County, and I think that it was our consensus of the board that we wanted to go a different way from that. And at that, and during that conversation, we asked for, I think I specifically asked for, I'd like to see a couple of different firms to look into their background to sort of see who we would want to pick. And so I was under the impression that we would get a couple of firms that maybe we could do some research ourselves, kind of know what we were getting into before we voted on Tuesday night. Thank you, Mr. Phillips, for explaining that actually the board doesn't have that option of choosing a firm, that is going to be strictly under the direction of the Office of General Counsel. The firm in question that you're presenting to us right now, you said this is not a local firm. So what I didn't see is, where are they located?
They have offices in several places, but Jamie Cole's office is in Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale.
And I should have mentioned also that one of the factors in consideration of their selection was their rates are, they give government entities very favorable rates. So the rate for the partners in this firm is $375 an hour, and for associates it's $275. And I'm sure you can think back on some other engagements y'all have had to know that that is a very, very good rate for top-tier attorneys.
Mm-hmm. My question and concern is that when we talk about a local firm, if we engage in a firm, whether it's in the county or outside of the county, we have to do a check to see if they have any potential conflict of interest with the board. And so my concern is going outside of the county as far as Fort Lauderdale, paying for the travel, paying for all of that, when in actuality, if we found a firm that was closer, maybe one in the city that did pass the conflict check, that they have no conflict, potential conflict with our board, that I just don't know why we would not consider a firm maybe closer. These are just my opinions. Again, we were presented with one firm. These are my thoughts on looking at other firms. I would have liked, and I think I said many times, I wanted to see a couple of different firms so that the board could look at that and sort of weigh in on who we were going to select. So that's where I am with that.
Board Member Willie.
Yeah, through the chair, I appreciate us actually not having a say in who the lawyer or law firm is. It actually creates a shield from us of bias, so I appreciate that. I do have a question around, I'm assuming that we picked a law firm or a firm because of the expertise they have, because this is very specific, and this firm seems to have done this in other places, so we're going to get the top notch. Can you explain a little bit about, in your opinion, how it was probably selected to get us that firm that could do the best job?
Well, the general counsel and Mr. Granite went through a number of potential firms to hire, and it was their consensus at the end that this one was, you know, the winner by far, especially considering issues like, you know, we thought it would be best not to have a local firm because we think that it's very important to have not only a completely unbiased investigation, but also the appearance of an unbiased investigation. And this firm, by the way, did a conflict check, and they have no conflicts with us. And so ultimately, the decision was made after they asked me what I thought, and actually the first name that I suggested was the same firm, without knowing that they had already arrived at the same conclusion. I mean, there are not that many firms that specialize in representing school boards in the state of Florida. I mean, there are some, but there aren't that many. And this one is inarguably, if not the best, one of the best.
All right, I do see Mr. Poole, and then I also have Board Member Jones. I'll start with Mr. Poole just because it looks like he has something he really wants to add, and then I'm going to go straight to Board Member Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to Board Member Joyce. One thing, and Mr. Phillips was not part of this conversation, but you may recall that a law firm in Tampa had been recommended. So we knew that, and then there were another recommendation of a local law firm had been made. So the three of us, Mr. Granite, the general counsel, Mr. Teal, and I, had a conversation at which point it was discussed that, look, here are two recommendations that have been made, and then the three of us went through, and it is very difficult to find law firms that do employment law in the field of public education, because it's as I've mentioned in a previous meeting, it's a different animal than employment law in the private sector. So we together went through and discussed different law firms in Florida that seemed to check the boxes, at which time this firm was identified. I don't know Mr. Cole. I do know they have some attorneys. They also have a Gainesville office where they have, I believe, board-certified attorneys in education law, which there are only 47 of us, and who have done a lot of Title IX investigations. And as you see from the list, they've done a great deal of. So Mr. Phillips was not part of that conversation, so I thought it may benefit your consideration to know that discussion was had, at which point I kind of course, it's Mr. Teal's, ran with it from there, so I backed out. But we did have the discussion about these other two firms at that time.
If I may, through the chair, in addition to that, I'd like to maybe just mention that one of the reasons, that isn't the only option to have this new allegation investigated by the general counsel's office, but we felt it was more efficient because of the fact that there is overlap it would be better for one entity to do the investigation overall. Because, in what I didn't mention before, and I think is very important, the goal of this investigation is not only to just get to the bottom of what happened, it's also to fix the problems. It's also to get feedback on just exactly what we can do and should do to make sure this never happens again.
And thank you for that. I'm going to come back to Board Member Jones on the selection of the firm. We'll move to scope of the work, and I'm grateful that you've already looked at how do we actually fit everything we need to fit in it. So thank you, and we'll come to that. So let's go with selection of firm. Board Member Jones, you were going to add at one point.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through the chair. Mr. Phillips, I know several of us have been before the special committee on the Office of General Counsel, and I think in this case, because the Office of General Counsel is separate and we don't have our own attorney, and they're making this recommendation, I think gives more neutrality to that recommendation. I certainly would not prefer a local firm. I think the publicity has been extensive, and that it would be difficult to find a local firm that has not already formed an opinion about what should happen. Secondly, I'm glad to hear, I didn't want to get into scope of services, but that was my concern, that we include that most recent letter that came yesterday. Through the chair, Mr. Phillips, what role, if any, would the Office of General Counsel have in supporting the investigation?
Well, through the chair, we would provide logistical support, and we would provide, they're going to tell us how it's going and what they're finding as it goes. Now, keep in mind that this is a situation where there is imminent threatened litigation from several people, and it's important that we be able to make the investigation in a way that isn't where people aren't following us around and interfering with the integrity of the investigation. And that's why in Florida there's a risk management file privilege for risk management activities and work product activities. And so the investigation would be conducted under the rubric of the risk management file privilege, and the people in the state attorney's office, in the general counsel's office, who are concerned and who are the top employment lawyers in the office, would necessarily need to know some of what's going on, because the possibility exists that there may be a list of people for whom discipline will be recommended. And then we'd have to deal with that if for example, some person was clearly derelict in not reporting a fact that he or she knew, and that comes out, then that some action may be necessary. And we also need to know, what happened so that we can get the best possible resolution for whatever claims are going to be made, within the boundaries of fiscal responsibility and fairness to the claimants.
One last question. I am a little concerned about having transparency, which we all want to have, and how that would impact any pending lawsuits that would be forthcoming. I don't know.
Through the chair, and that's a very good point, and that's why we're doing it this way, because once the report is final and we've had the opportunity to fix the problems, that report would become a public record, so that anybody who wants to know what happened and who did what to who and who's been disciplined and who not, it ultimately, every bit of the investigation will be transparent. It just that doing it this way, it won't be interfered with while it's going on.
Thank you, and I think all of us want to ensure that it's transparent, so that we can let the public know what happened and who's at fault. Thank you.
Certainly. Any more questions about the selection of the firm? And then I'm going to move to scope. I know we've got a little ahead. We're good on selection? Okay. All right, let's move on to more along the lines of the scope of the work, and we've already touched a little bit there. Other questions on scope of work? Board Member Carney.
Through the chair to Mr. Phillips, first of all, thank you for all your hard work, Mr. Teal and Mr. Granite. We truly appreciate it. In regards to the overlap of the current situation at Douglas Anderson and the letter that was received yesterday, is there a timeline as to how we're going to proceed with the investigation? Will the situation at Douglas Anderson take precedent first, or will we be combining Douglas Anderson with a district-wide investigation? I just want to be clear for the general public so they know what to expect.
Through the chair, that would likely depend upon the availability of stuff we could actually look at with respect to the recent allegations. So I think we'd probably get started, although I don't know, because it's going to be up to the person largely who's conducting, or persons, I should say, because it's not just going to be one person, I'm sure. It'll be up to those people to determine how to do that. And but there are, I'm not at this point as I stand here, I have no idea what was actually sent to the state. And so for starters, we need to determine what was sent to the state so that we can, see what we're talking about. And but it would be natural to have a suspicion that some of those reports that are alleged not to have been forwarded could relate to Douglas Anderson. And so that's why we need to just kind of comprehensively look at everything. And, there's a number of ways you can do it. It could be that one person from the firm will look at that while the other person is simultaneously focusing on Douglas Anderson. So I don't know how exactly to answer that question, but I think, certainly we'll have a discussion with them about, okay, what's the general plan? What's the order you're planning on doing it in roughly? And look, so we can apprise the board of at least our progress as it moves along.
Okay. And then I just have one more. In regards to communications, I know you just spoke upon, after the investigation is done, that report will become public record. Will there be opportunities for the firm to come forward to the public to give them an update on possibly what they may have found, or is that we have to wait until everything is completed and finalized?
Through the chair, my guess is, based upon my 44 years of experience as investigating things along these lines, including being a homicide prosecutor for 14 years, I doubt that they're going to want to explain much while the investigation is going on. I think what they will be happy, I would guess they'd be happy to, however, discuss publicly their findings once the report's final. That might very well be a good idea. Of course, the report will have to be redacted because we won't be able to include student names and things like that. But I mean, it's not like we're gonna, it's not like the Defense Department where you get like 3 sentences out of 20.
Understood. Yeah, I just want to make sure the public understands that it's going to be some time before we have some answers, and I want that to be,
Through the chair, that's correct. It'll be some time, but these are the kinds of things that are far better to do thoroughly and well rather than a hurry.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Vice Chair Pearson.
Through the chair to Mr. Phillips. With regards to timing, I'm just thinking we have about 4 or 5 weeks left of school. And then we have our school-based personnel, many will not be in a building over the summer. And looking at it, I just wrote down 3 to 6 months for the investigation ? Because I didn't know. But will the fact that we have a summer break coming up impact the investigators' ability to do interviews or continue the investigation over the summer?
Through the chair, if it isn't finished before the last day of school, I would guess that there might be some impact on it. that's one of the reasons why I would recommend that we get started immediately. And of course, we also have to be sensitive to the students' needs as well. So we're not going to be talking to students while they're supposed to be taking a final exam and that sort of thing. So I don't quite know how to answer that question because I can't rule out the possibility that it will get done in a couple of months, but I don't know that. My guess is it probably won't be finished until the month or two into the next school year because of anticipated possibility of people being away on vacation and that sort of thing.
I saw Board Member Joyce and then Board Member Willie.
Thank you. Through the chair to the board, I sort of see this as two different buckets. When we originally came here, we were looking at a firm to investigate the allegations surrounding Douglas Anderson and what happened and where our systems failed us, maybe, potentially. And then as we've talked through this, adding to that scope the reporting requirement to the state. So for me, I see it in two different pieces. Each one of them is extremely, extremely important because we have to make sure this doesn't happen again. But I'm coming from a place where we have asked our children, if you see something, say something. We've asked them to say something, and they have. And they haven't been heard. And so I would like, even though both are extremely important, I would like to prioritize and get back the information as soon as we can to the board on where our systems failed us, chain of command, emails, anyone in this district that knew this was going on. I think we need to act swiftly and really before the beginning of school next year. We need to know all of the people that were involved in this. And so I put them in two different buckets, and I'm asking that this be a priority, that we understand and we remedy this problem before the beginning of school.
Okay.
Through the chair, agree completely. If it's possible to do, it'll get done that way. We may get, conceivably we could get a stroke of luck if Mr. Clayton's criminal case is completely resolved soon. That file becomes public record, and there may be a whole lot of stuff in that file that would be very important for our investigation that we won't have to reduplicate effort on.
Board Member Willie.
No, through the chair, I appreciate the conversation, and I'll just go back. I appreciate the courage of the families, the DA students who have stood here and told us this. And I do believe, I think it's actually adjacent, if not aligned. If we're talking about mandatory reporting, and that may be one of the issues, I think it makes sense to have that conversation and do all of this. And I have a lot of questions about the letters and what's in the letters, what's omitted from the letters. All of that, I think, needs to be, we need to have that conversation. Because if we just receive a letter on face value as a board, we have to do our due diligence. We have to go and check that letter, fact check it, make sure we're doing what's right on our end, they're doing what's right on their end. And I think this investigation does that. And my question to you, when we think about the focus, I definitely think we should put the mandatory. My question would be, once we have this focus, if we're focused in on this full investigation of DA, and this mandatory reporting, are there other pieces? Because we can say the letter, but the letter included a lot of different things. So are we talking about just mandatory reporting? That's my question there. It's what in that letter are we kind of picking out, or is it all of the letter?
Through the chair, now I would view it more, and of course I don't know all the facts at this point, which is one reason why we need to investigate.
Right.
But I would be of the view that it is likely that there could be some disciplinary action taken about not forwarding those 50 files if that's what happened. And how many people would have been involved in that, and why the files weren't forwarded, and, you know, sort of fundamental issues like why did you forward them now, and, you know, as opposed to like why did you forward them in 2020? You know, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, and so it's not just a reporting issue, it's also an employment law issue for the employer.
The other piece that I want to make mention and ask the question, we have a focused investigation on DA, and that's what we should be focused on. And I know there's a lot of noise and other things about other things people trying to do, want to do. I believe that's out of bounds and premature to have any conversation about personnel, especially our superintendent. I truly believe that.
I want to make sure we have publicly noticed this meeting.
I'm asking a
Okay.
question.
We publicly
I'm asking a
noticed.
question. I'm allowed to ask my question. I believe it's out of bounds. So here's my question. If we're focusing the investigation here, what is our posture as a board while this investigation is happening about any other thing that we need to do as a board? What should we be doing? I believe we should be focused on the investigation before we move forward with any other actions, because that's what we are here to do. Focus on our students, making sure we get what's right and make it safe in this investigation. That's my question.
Through the chair, I agree that we certainly need to be focused on that. And however, I need to, I guess, step back for a second and mention that, you know, my role here is to give the board legal advice and not to give advice that involves my personal opinion about
That's fair.
policy.
That's fair.
So what I've done so far has really been focused on the legality of this, and I do think, I mean, the one policy thing that I would like to opine on is I would really like to get this investigation started tomorrow.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of nods up here. If I may, because I've gone all the way around and I've held on my comments, because I've been making sure you all, as board chair, are trying to facilitate conversation. With the firm that we're looking to hire, will there be an opportunity for each board member to meet with them to go through anything that we have noted, concerns, et cetera, that we want to make sure of, just that are bothersome in our minds? And then I also have, and actually it's from the public comment earlier, 2 specific items that were mentioned in terms of, just like myself, I'd like to know if I can speak with them, but the Douglas Anderson alumni are a group that are out there and they are hurting, and it is real for them. The Douglas Anderson parents are hurting, and it is real for them. Current parents, prior parents. Will there be an opportunity for them to, even if it's send information, so is there going to be a way for there to be some outlet for them to communicate anything that they believe needs to be communicated to the investigators that are hired? Just like I want to communicate anything I have of a concern. I think we're all in the same bucket now that I talk about it.
I think the answer to both of those questions is yes. I can't imagine why the investigators would not want to speak to the board members who want to speak to them. And anybody who wants to send any factual information to them, to the investigators, I mean, if it's sent to the general counsel's office, we'll forward it. I mean, there's no problem. They're not they're not going to be operating with like a force field around them. I'm sure that they're going to want it. The more they know, the better they like it, and that's how investigations generally work.
Could it be feasible to make sure they all get to the same spot, that maybe the district open up an email address specifically to receive these items that could be then, or is it, what's the best conduit?
It would be better to send it to, I would say, Ariel Cook in the general counsel's
Ms.
office.
Cook is here right now. Hello, Ms. Cook. How are you doing? I'm good. We're good, Ms. Cook.
I'm
We're
volun-
grateful for you right now.
I'm volunteering her so
Okay,
that she could be
fair.
the central repository for that sort of information, and then she'll make sure, because she'll be involved in this. I won't, unfortunately, I may not be in the office long enough for this investigation to get concluded, although I certainly hope that it is.
Right.
Because I'm going to retire in the near future.
And then and maybe this will happen in the conversation, but the reality is this has gone back for years. I agree with that. And will this firm understand that this is not about just now or 2 years, that it is about a history of something at this school that we're now understanding has been there?
Absolutely.
It's,
And the scope of work is large enough so that, it isn't just limited to Douglas Anderson necessarily. If somebody else brings up something else about some sexual misconduct at a different school, they're not going to ignore it.
okay. All right, thank you. And to those that made public comment that brought those items, thank you to you. Vice Chair Pearson.
Thank you. I think you just, through the chair, I think you touched on one of my questions, which in my mind, I'm thinking this is the micro is the current situation, current past situation at Douglas Anderson, and then the macro is the district. And within that, I would like to look at all streams. Is our policy what it should be on this? Are our processes, or our system the way that it should be? Do we need to update from a paper system to a digital system when it comes to employee records? Can we put some kind of a red flag system in there to alert when someone's putting in, inputting that the whole record would pop up or something like that? We need to I would like to look at our progressive discipline and how, I guess I just addressed that, but progressive discipline and our procedures within that. And then the impact of progressive discipline on the performance evaluation for faculty. And I don't know if that gets into a contract or not, but as I was thinking about what I would like to see happen, those were some of the things that came up. But really looking at our process and our systems and making sure that we are doing the most we can to catch anyone who might fly under the radar. Yeah.
Through the chair, completely agree with all those are excellent questions. My suggestion would be maybe you and I could sit down and I can make a list and make sure they have a written list of all your concerns, and I'm happy to make the same offer to everybody else so that they understand, what's being expected of them. That's always important in this sort of investigation, and I do anticipate that ultimately system-wide improvement recommendations will be made in the report.
Thank you.
If you'll lean forward into the mic,
Oh,
that
sorry.
last sentence.
Is this better?
Perfect.
Okay. I have a tendency not to talk too loud.
You're good. You're good. Any other, and I will tell you as a board member, I do have a list myself, and so I'll be making an appointment with you. I won't belabor that today. Board Member Joyce, looks like you
Yeah,
have.
another thought. I do have a list, so thank you. I will be calling and talking to the parties that I need to speak with about some concerns that I have with reports that I've seen. Again, I know this is the scope of this investigation. When we are relating it to Douglas Anderson, goes back years.
Right.
But we have two situations currently, the 2021 incident and this one. These potentially are employees that are in our district now. that work now. So I really want to prioritize and get everything right now before the beginning of school next year. So I know there's a scope that's going to go back, and there's going to be employees that are probably going to be identified that maybe are no longer with the district or whatever, but specifically, right now, in the culture and climate that we're in, who is responsible? Who knew? I want to know that the sooner, the better.
Through the chair, and me too, and everybody involved, also them too. I should have probably made this more clear, and that is, as the investigation progresses, there could be evidence developed that is more than sufficient to take action against a particular individual. And if that happens, we will not have to wait for the final report to come out. If we develop information that's of, just hypothetically, no offense to vice principals, but if we develop enough evidence that a particular vice principal, hypothetical vice principal, should clearly be demoted or suspended or terminated, the employment team at OGC can take action on that without waiting for the full investigation to come about. So as we go, there'll be more to do, but at this point, we'd likely contemplate that OGC would help the district with the day-to-day routine discipline matters that we always have represented the district in, and hope and will likely continue, unless for some reason we discover a conflict, which I can't imagine that we would be handling that ourselves.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right, before I move on to budget, anything else on scope of work? Board Member Willie.
Through the chair, so where did we land? We're including mandatory reporting requirements? That's
Yes.
where we're landing, okay.
That being said, I'll move on to budget at this point. I know you had said 25, now potentially 30. Just want to make sure as a board we know what we're getting into from a budget standpoint.
Yes. Am I supposed to say to the chair when I'm talking directly?
You can say to the chair.
Okay, to the chair.
Sometimes people say to the chair through the chair, but anyway.
Yeah,
It gets very complicated.
I confess I've never quite understood all of that, but mainly because of just willful ignorance. But because I don't make a habit of appearing in front of a bunch of elected officials. Usually I'm sort of
But we
behind the
always like
scenes.
it when you're here.
Anyway, deciding on a budget in any engagement is much more of an art than it is a science. It is difficult to estimate with specificity how much something's going to cost, and that's especially true when we haven't started the investigation and we have no idea what kind of mountain of information we have to try to wade through and make sense of. So that could be low. It likely is low, but it's a good starting point. The firm suggested it. They've done investigations before, and they have a sense of how much these kinds of things tend to cost. And then what happens after is, if there's a provision in the contract that they have to tell us once they get to $20,000, and then we can amend the engagement to raise the budget as we go, if necessary, which, obviously, hopefully we won't. But I wouldn't be surprised if we are coming back with an amendment at some point.
But you would come back with that amendment.
I'm sorry?
You would come back with that amendment.
Yeah, the process for doing that would just be for the general counsel and the superintendent to agree to increase the budget, and subject to the Michelle Bagley's certification that there are unencumbered funds to cover it.
Questions on budget for anyone? Board Member Carney.
Through the chair to Mr. Phillips, so just simple math, which you gave us for the hourly rate, the discounted rate. I'm just curious if we're gonna be able to get to the bottom of this for roughly 80 hours worth of work. Do you think that that's reasonable?
Through the chair, I'm guessing that may prove to be not doable, and that's why I'm telling you now that it could be that we'll be back asking for an increase in the budget.
Okay.
But 80 hours is a darn good start. I mean,
Sure.
that's a lot of attorney time when you're, if you interview 80 hours worth of witnesses, you're going to have a lot of information.
Thank you.
And I will say, I also think that in the, taking my time to speak, calling on myself right now, that by going with the firm that they have recommended, because they have a background in expertise, they are not going to have to get up to par on what does progressive discipline look like, what is the legal matter behind it. They have done these investigations before, so you save that research time period that people who have no familiarity would have to do. So it's actually cost-effective to do a firm that actually specializes in the work as well.
Yes, that's correct. To the chair, this firm is fully capable of hitting the ground running once we give them the go-ahead.
All right. Any further questions at this time?
I have a question.
Board Member Willie.
Really quick, through the chair. So we've figured out the scope. I appreciate it. I'm glad we've added in the other pieces. I do realize there's a meeting on Friday about concerns and the mandatory reporting requirements. So I'm wondering, what's the difference if we have this conversation, know the scope? What are we discussing if we're under and we have our investigation on Friday?
That is an opportunity for board members that have any additional concerns to be able to have a venue for those concerns at this time. At this point, I felt strongly that the Douglas Anderson community deserved a meeting where we focus on the issues that have occurred there, and wanted to make sure that we gave them their time and that we were solely focused on that piece of the item. So,
So through the meeting on Friday is for Douglas Anderson
and
parents and family to come.
the
or
meeting is
listen to the board
absolutely
discuss.
open to anyone in our community. All meetings are open to anyone in our community at all times. But any concerns unrelated to the investigation at this time?
I was just asking that question because if we have clarity on what our scope of work is and investigation, and we're now having another meeting about mandatory reporting requirements, and we don't have information from an investigation, I just wonder about
And
what our focus will be.
I
in that.
appreciate
Yeah.
your sentiment. Any further questions at this time from the board? All right. As always, to Mr. Phillips, we appreciate it. We appreciate all of those at OGC that help us and support us in the work. Ms. Cook, good luck with those emails. We appreciate you being willing to capture them. That is an important piece of the puzzle. And to Mr. Teal and Mr. Granite, while they are not here, again, thank you for supporting and serving us over on the district. Oh,
I'm sorry,
I'm
Madam
sorry.
Chair.
Board Member Jones.
Through the chair, I know Mr. Phillips asked about starting tomorrow.
Oh.
We cannot take action. Can we
What-
legally take action today, I guess?
What, he actually has the authority to go ahead and proceed, but what I would ask, Mr. Poole, thank you, Mr. Jones, this is why you are always important in my world to keep me on track. What I would ask, certainly time is of the essence, and you all have the authority to do it anyway. Mr. Poole, is there a way, whether it is through still an agenda item, a resolution of some sort? I feel like the Douglas Anderson community deserves for us to put something in writing that we're going to follow through and we're going to be diligent, and this process is going to take a while, but it must happen. And I know one way to hold people accountable is to put pen to paper. And so can you do something in regards to that? And no, again, legally, they can get started, which is great. We want them to. But can you make sure that you do something for us so that we can make a statement to our community that we are on this and we are working on it and we're going to see it to the finish line?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's perfect. And Mr. Jones, thank you so much for keeping me straight on that, as always. At this point, we're going to take a motion to move to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Joyce and a second by Board Member Willie. All those in favor signal by saying yay.
Yay.
Any opposed? That motion passes 6-0. And thank you to those that joined us today.